Hello, hello, hello. We are about to dive into probably the most comprehensive explanation of people pleasing, why you do it, and how to stop that anyone has ever given you. So sit down, sit tight. We're going to make it nice and quick, get through all of the essentials, give you exactly what you need to do. But breaking this habit of people pleasing is huge for you because it stops you from constantly seeking approval from others and finally just lets you set the boundaries that you deserve. So when we're always focused on making other people happy, it really makes our confidence take a hit and it feels like we can just get really stuck in our relationships and our career and feeling like we're limited in how we speak up for ourselves, being able to have healthier connections, maybe ask for what we want or say what we need, and it stops us from moving towards the self that we actually want to have, the life that we want to have, the people that we want to be. So today, just really quick, really intentional, we're going to talk about exactly what people pleasing is, how it impacts your self-worth, identifying your people pleasing triggers, that one is huge, and then also how to set healthy boundaries. It's a really important one. And then overcoming this fear of disappointing other people. That's a whole conversation in itself. Then we're going to rebuild our confidence and we're going to talk about some practical tools to stop people pleasing. And I'm going to give you a little action plan. We're going to build that together because you can take all the knowledge, but if you aren't able to implement it, then we just are left feeling even more overwhelmed than we started. So first things first, I just want to get a clear kind of definition or explanation of people pleasing because it's a word that we hear a lot, but it's maybe not something that we're even super clear on. Like we know that we do it, but we don't really know exactly what it means. But super simple, people pleasing is prioritizing other people's needs over your own. And oftentimes this is so subconscious, it's so subtle, and the way that we notice it is that it just doesn't feel very good. Like we might be burnt out, feeling overwhelmed all the time. We might find ourselves even irritable with people we love or with our jobs, with our coworkers. And it's often a sign of people pleasing because our needs are not being met. But we need to understand why we people please because we do it for a reason that's actually trying to honor and serve us. It's not hitting the mark. But people pleasing is often about the other person, but it's really about ourselves. It usually lies deeper within ourselves, maybe in our past experiences, maybe even in our childhood. And it's often us looking for a desire for approval from other people. So if you're someone that has always been a really hard worker or a really loyal friend, those are beautiful qualities to have, but oftentimes it's also rooted in a bit of people pleasing. If you're here, if you're watching this recording later, if you're watching this video later, then that might be part of the reason. We are really looking for a desire for approval from other people, and it can make us show up a certain way in the workplace, in our friendships, and that is a wonderful thing. But again, we often end leaving that conversation or leaving that hangout or leaving that work day just feeling a bit depleted. So that can be a big reason that we people please. Another reason that we people please also might be that we have a fear of rejection. So if you're someone that struggles to be bad, and I put that in little air quotes for a reason because it's okay to not be good at everything, but bad at something new, like if you are onboarding or training for a new job and it makes you really uncomfortable not to know something, it's hard for you to ask for help in your life. Maybe that's in your work life. Maybe that's in your personal life. We can often feel this fear of rejection, which is basically someone saying, I don't want you, I don't need you, I can't be there for you, you're not good enough. Whatever that dialogue is in our heads, that's a big reason that we people please a lot of times. If we keep other people happy, then they won't essentially become upset with us and reject us. So desire for approval and fear of rejection. And then in general, just like wanting to keep the peace. So I know that in my life, in my childhood, I grew up in a household that was, for the most part, very happy, very safe. but there was one specific situation that comes to mind for me where it caused my family a lot of stress. And I learned that me having needs, wants, desires, fears on top of that, and asking that from my parents, asking them to be there for me, it would cause them more stress because they were already stressed. And instead of adding to that stress, I would do my absolute best to not have needs, to not ask for things, to never need help with my homework, to be always be getting good grades in school and making them really proud of me in that way, making them happy. I wanted to keep the peace. So I wanted to be a source of not just neutrality, like not adding to the conflict, but I also started to learn that it was beneficial for my feelings of safety and my feelings of peace in that situation to be able to cater to their emotions in that way and keep the peace. So those are our three major reasons that we tend to people please: that desire for approval, fear of rejection, and wanting to keep our peace. The way that this shows up the most frequently in our lives is simply saying yes when you mean no. So the reason that that might happen is because you struggle to say no because you want to avoid conflict. Maybe you're constantly seeking validation. Again, it's okay to want validation. Validation gets a bad rep. Validation is not a dirty word. We are humans. We are a social species. It is normal to want validation, but there becomes a point where it doesn't feel good. It starts to be that people pleasing. So saying yes when you mean no could be as simple as someone asking you for help, asking you to spend time with them, asking you to support them, and you know that you don't have the desire or maybe the energetic capacity or the time, and you still say yes. And maybe this sounds in your brain like, well, I know I don't really want to do that, or I don't have the time for that, but it would make them so sad, or would make them feel lonely. It would really help them for me to do this. And we so naturally think about how this is going to impact or affect the other person more than we think about how it's going to affect us, which doesn't feel very good in the long run and can also really impact our relationships because you become resentful over time. You become avoidant sometimes to people that you know take a lot from you. And it's harder to have healthy relationships because the relationship is maybe too involved, too intense. This also takes a big emotional toll on us with feeling exhausted, unappreciated, and just really disconnected from ourselves. So with the unappreciated especially, I hear this so often with clients, especially with work and with long-term partnerships. So a lot of my clients that are married, they come to me and they tell me, I'm really struggling with my body image, I'm really struggling with my self-esteem, and I also just don't feel super appreciated by my partner, And that's not a great feeling, especially if you're in a relationship where you're trying to build something long-term with somebody. You want something to last forever. Maybe you want to have children with this person. Feeling unappreciated in your relationships is not something that feels good or contributes to a healthy environment in your relationship long term. So people pleasing, something that we do, can actually cause that feeling with another person. And I don't say that to blame anybody. I just say that to take a little bit of accountability because people pleasing is something that we do. There's a reason that's so valid, but it's something that we can take control of as well. I also hear this a lot with work-life balance. When I used to bartend and waitress, I actually worked for a restaurant where it's a very small restaurant. I bartended, I waited the tables, I made the schedule, I was the manager. I did the social media, I would cook, I would be the barista in the morning, and I would do the dishes. So other than owning the place, there's not many jobs left over. I did everything for this place that didn't care about me. They just didn't care about me. And over time, I realized that I had essentially put myself in this position because as they had asked me to do more, or I had seen a need for more, I saw like, well, this could be better if I did this. I took responsibility that I didn't actually want to have. And all of a sudden I was in a situation where I felt so unappreciated. I was exhausted and I had no time for myself. People pleasing really disconnects us from ourselves because number one, We don't know what we actually like to do and who we are. And number two, we don't have time to take care of ourselves because we spend so much time, but also energy on other people. And I emphasize the energy because when we think about doing something for ourselves, maybe it's just going on a short walk or doing some stretches in the morning, reading your book, taking time off, doing things for your physical health, like cooking yourself a home cooked meal or exercising, or setting boundaries, they require energy. Even if you have the time in your schedule, if you don't have the energy to do these things, then you don't have the time. You really don't have it because you need the energy with it. When I work with new clients, I always tell them, if you're nervous about how this program is going to fit into your life, then don't worry. I'm here to help because the way that I do this with my clients is that I'm the energy. They can show up to the call in a state of whatever's going on in their life at the time. Maybe that's really tired, maybe that's really exhausted, maybe that's really stressed or confused or chaotic. I'm the person that brings the energy. All they have to do is bring the time. But most situations are not like that, especially when you are serving someone else. So if you are a partner or a mother or a daughter, as we all are, or, an employee, we often feel disconnected from ourselves because we aren't able to be unconditionally held in those spaces. So people pleasing is something that can take away from that. So that's us acknowledging our problem. Again, if we're here, we understand what's going on. I want to talk about how this impacts our self-worth and then identifying your people-pleasing triggers. So people-pleasing undermines your self-esteem because it just teaches you from the jump, from the beginning, that someone else's needs are more important than your own. And therefore, you can never be your own top priority. Being your own top priority is not selfish. Being your own top priority means looking out for yourself. It means recognizing that you cannot show up fully in your other roles if you can't show up fully with yourself. If you are exhausted, if you are feeling unappreciated, if you have unmet emotional or physical needs, like maybe you're so busy, you don't even have time to feed yourself well or feed yourself enough because you are taking care of other people all the time. You're putting out fires at work. You've got a family, you've got a partner, you've got friends that always need you. You can never be your top priority, which means you can never fully show up for those other people as well. And this leads to us feeling resentful towards these situations or these people because we are so drained. Feeling resentful, not a good feeling. It only hurts. It only hurts you. It only hurts the other person. That disconnect between who you are and how you present yourself, who you really are and how you present yourself to others, that leads to that resentment, that leads to feeling drained, that leads to feeling exhausted. So when you have such a disconnect between who you really are and how you show up in the world, that makes your perception of yourself confusing because you're not acting in alignment with who you tell yourself you are or want to be, what you value, what you care about, how you act. You go out into the world and you interact with people and it completely changes. So that really does impact your self-worth because you don't know yourself as well as you want to. And then it has that impact on your relationships. So you attract people who take advantage of you or don't appreciate you. And it's almost like we're this little magnet where people can tell, like, oh, this person seems really compassionate, really willing, really empathetic, maybe a little bit easy to almost manipulate. And people don't often realize that they're even seeing us in that way. But people that need help, that need support, they will hold themselves towards those people. And if you're willing to give that, they'll take it. And we often end up feeling like we've been taken advantage of when we look back on these situations. I'm going to say something a little bit controversial about people pleasing. And I've already said in this call that being selfish in itself is not a bad thing. Being selfish is a neutral word. Sometimes it's important to be self-focused, self-obsessed, self-involved, whatever you want to call it. Being selfish is not always a bad thing. But there is a part of me that believes, from my client work, from seeing so many people struggle with this, and what I've already explained about why we people please, where that comes from, There's a part of me that believes, and is comfortable saying my little controversial opinion, people pleasing is inherently selfish and it's inherently manipulative. And I'm not saying that you are a manipulative person overall. I'm just going to bring us back to why we people please, and that's a desire for approval, a fear of rejection, and wanting to keep the peace. Those are all things that we do to get a certain reaction from someone else. And again, it is so understandable why we do it, how we grew up, and what we were taught to be in our culture and our society. But I just want us to recognize that people pleasing is something that we do by ourselves, for ourselves. And the reason that I say that is because I want to empower you to not be a victim about your people pleasing. You are someone that is in charge of your people pleasing, someone that is capable of stopping your people pleasing. And by being here, you are already doing that. But I just want us to understand that we people please to try and get a reaction from somebody else. And that's so understandable, but it doesn't really serve us, and it isn't the healthiest, best thing for them, because again, that other person, whether it's our workplace or our relationships, they don't actually understand who we truly are or how we truly feel and think, because we're not presenting that to them. So let's talk about our people pleasing triggers. I want us to recognize situations where you're most likely to people please. Again, I've already mentioned them many times, but most often in my client work, what I see is we people please with family, with friends, and with work. I think what I hear the most, like top three, is our relationships with our mother, our relationships with our friend group, and our relationships with our workplace. So with our mother, the reason that that comes up a lot is because in a lot of the clients I have, we are highly empathetic people. We really care about others, and we also might have a little bit of a complicated relationship with our mom. If you're someone that's worked with me to have stronger self-worth, stronger body image, we've probably already had the conversation that your parentals, usually your mother, but depending on your family structure, even your father or whoever raised you, your guardians when you were growing up, your core role models, they messed you up a little bit, as is natural. We all kind of have a little bit of trauma from the way that we were raised, because no parent or guardian is perfect. But often that parent or guardian is our mother. So I will speak in that reference. Our mothers are often mirrors of ourselves. We often see an older version of ourselves in them. They often see a younger version of themselves in us. And we care about these people a lot, but we also have some complicated emotional ties because maybe they've messed us up a little bit when we were growing up. And they've also taught us, everything we know. So what I hear from clients a lot is, oh yeah, my mom has a really messed up relationship with food. She gave me a lot of that stuff. Or my mom is always really critical of her body. She gave me a lot of that stuff. And so we are highly empathetic people, and we care about our mothers a lot. And we're also often contacted them a lot. Maybe they tell us a lot. Maybe they overshare a little bit in a way that's not appropriate in a family dynamic and a parent-child dynamic. But regardless, we have empathy and we feel bad for them, and we understand their struggle because we have the same struggle. And then we can struggle to set healthy boundaries in that relationship. Maybe it's around the body and the food talk. Maybe it's around the guilt tripping that happens if you don't come to the holiday or the family dinner, the family gathering. Maybe it's trying to change them. Maybe you try to change them. Maybe you try to keep them as happy as possible so that they can finally feel better because you've watched them your whole life not feeling good about themselves. I just want to put that out there as so normal and something that pretty much everybody I work with, we have had that conversation in some degree, how their relationship with their parent or their mother especially has impacted them. And we'll talk about setting boundaries, but it's a really important thing to have in that type of relationship so you can have a closer relationship. Closer might not mean spending more time together. Closer might mean actually spending less time together. That quality time when you are together or you are speaking, being happier and healthier. In our friend groups, we also tend to people please. This might look like saying yes to, again, things that you don't want to do, but that could be like hanging out with someone, helping them with something. And we can also often use time with friends that isn't actually really in alignment with our energy as a way to avoid loneliness, or again, that fear of rejection, which is like, oh, if I speak up for myself, if I say no when these people ask me to hang out, if I say no too many times, they're going to stop inviting me. And there's that fear as well. And then with our workplace, of course, as I've already mentioned, we love to go above and beyond for people that do not give a shit about us. Maybe your workplace is great, but 95% of people that I talk to, they do not feel that great about their workplace. They don't feel like it is truly a family. They don't feel unconditionally held. They don't feel unconditionally looked after and protected. And I just want you to remember to take care of yourself first, because it will make you a better employee, but also because work is not permanent, but you will be with yourself for your whole life. So I want us to figure out what emotions trigger our people pleasing. Personally, and in a lot of my clients, what I see the most is guilt. So again, we tend to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and we think, oh, like if I don't do this for them, they'll feel fill in the blank. They'll feel sad. They'll feel alone. They'll feel like I don't care. They'll feel unhappy. They'll feel abandoned, whatever it is. We tend to feel guilty when we think about how other people might struggle. And that, again, is such a beautiful thing to have in our heart. But it gets to a point where we start sacrificing ourselves for another person, and we don't look after ourselves the way that we look after other people. So you also might have an emotional trigger that comes up, like fear of conflict, like we talked about, fear of rejection, guilt, all of those. But I really just want you, as you catch yourself people pleasing, or you catch yourself in a decision-making process, like your boss just asked you to work overtime or on the weekend, someone just asked you to hang out, someone just called you crying and asked for support, your mom's called you 50 times today and you feel bad not picking up the phone. What is the emotion that comes up? And just take a moment to kind of write that down in your brain, or you can write it down on paper and kind of start to journal about this, but start to see the common patterns. You also might be triggered by some other patterns in your life, like perfectionism or a fear of not being liked, very common, or wanting to avoid disappointment. So I want you to really take a little inventory of yourself and find some personal stories to represent some of the patterns that you might have experienced. So with my perfectionism, for example, I have some concrete examples where that's shown up in my relationships, and it's definitely led to some people pleasing, but it's also led to me not feeling good and them not feeling good. Because when I people please too much in my relationships, because I want to be the perfect friend, I have this fear of not being liked. I tend to overcommit myself socially, for example. So I'll say yes to too many things, and then I can't give anybody my full attention, and they can feel it. So finding some of our common patterns, again, perfectionism, fear of not being liked, wanting to avoid disappointment, and then actively recognizing when those come up in your decision making. Let's talk about setting healthy boundaries. This one's super, super important. This is kind of one of the biggest remedies of people pleasing, is setting healthy boundaries. So this is really important in maintaining your emotional well-being, but it's also really important in maintaining the health of your relationships. We start small when we do this. I just want you to practice saying no without over-explaining. So, no, sorry, I can't today. It feels uncomfortable for me to even not give an example scenario and explanation to go with that. No is a really uncomfortable thing for us to say when we are people pleasing. And maybe it's not a verbal no. Maybe it's just not responding to a message right away, or not picking up the phone every time someone calls just because they're calling you. Is it the best time for you to answer the phone? Does it make sense for your needs, for your schedule to stay overtime? Is it in alignment with what you need this week to say yes to helping someone with something, we often feel selfish. We often feel guilty when we do this, but saying no is saying yes to something or someone else. That someone else is so often ourselves, but even that something else might be like getting to bed on time, or having time to do laundry, or having time with someone who does really replenish your energy versus makes you feel drained. We can have compassion for other people without sacrificing ourselves for them. So just start small, just start practicing saying no without over explaining. When we set boundaries, we try not to over explain for our own sake, but also because it makes the boundary seem more legitimate. If you over explain, it seems like an excuse versus being calm and firm and clear. Amazing. I want you to reframe your boundaries as well, both inside and out, as an act of self-love and protection, not selfishness. So for example, if I had a friend today, I have a busy work day after this, I got lots to do, busy girl. I have a friend that I know wants to see me, and I don't really feel like I have the time or the energy today. And so what I'm going to share with them is not, I don't have time to hang out with you. No. It might sound something more like, I can't make some space today because I'm really going to take care of my own mental health and my professional life. I'm self-employed. I got to get my work done. Reframing it as something I'm doing for myself, not against the other person, makes us feel more comfortable because we have this fear of being selfish, not being a good person. And it also invites a little bit less room for conflict from the other person. The little asterisk I'll put with boundary setting is that you need to detach yourself right now from the idea that you're going to be able to control how the other person is going to respond to your boundary, because you just can't. We cannot control other people. Again, so much of the controlling other people is the people pleasing. We're trying to say things in a certain way so that they don't negatively react. If you set a boundary that is calm and clear and kind, and someone still reacts negatively, that's simply not a reflection of you. Boundaries make people uncomfortable. People don't like being uncomfortable. They want to be comfortable, and they're comfortable with you always saying yes or you doing things for them. So you're changing their perspective of you, or they're changing their expectations of you. And so it might be uncomfortable for them, but that's something that they need to have the emotional maturity to sit in and ask themselves, she's telling me that she's not going to do this today because she needs to take care of herself. Why does that upset me? How can I honor my own needs? But that's not something you can do for them. So when we set boundaries, we do not take accountability for how other people respond, but we take full accountability for how we show up. And we want to show up in a way that is, again, calm, kind, and clear, so that you can be proud of who you are when you set these boundaries. I want you to just take a moment to reflect on a situation where you wish you had set a boundary. I'm sure something comes to mind. I'm sure something has already come to mind in this conversation, because we're talking a lot about our interactions with other people. So how could you have communicated with that person in a way that was calm, clear, and kind, and reframed your situation and your perspective as an act of self-love, an act of protection for your mental and physical health, not selfishness or confrontation? I have a full boundary setting formula in the form of a couple different videos and some workbook work that I give my clients as well, but it is a full formula. If you're watching this now or later and you want that formula, send me a message, because I will get that over to you. It's a bonus resource that I'll have to go with this, but just send me a message so I can send it to everybody that wants it. It's a very simple formula that will write a script for you. Just don't have the time to dive into that in full in a call. It is a call in itself, which is why it's a recording and a PDF that I have. So we're setting boundaries, we're leveling up, let's talk about overcoming this fear of disappointing other people, because so much of what I hear with boundaries is like, if I set a boundary, they're going to be disappointed in me. They're going to be upset with me. Again, that fear of rejection, of disappointing someone, of conflict. Disappointing other people sometimes is inevitable. And that's okay. It feels really uncomfortable because we have this idea of ourselves that we need to be perfect. We need to always be doing the most. But disappointing other people is inevitable, and that's okay. The difference between real guilt and false guilt, essentially when you feel guilty for setting a boundary and you haven't actually done anything wrong, is that one of them allows you to reflect and be a better person, and the other one keeps you stuck. So real guilt, you've done something that you're not proud of. And false guilt, you feel guilty for standing up for yourself. Those are two very different energies. And I want you to start to differentiate between the two. When do you feel guilt that has been programmed into you, such as me being taught when I was younger that it is inappropriate for me to be upset with someone, to have a strong emotional reaction when someone mistreats me? I feel guilty for being upset, for being angry, versus the false guilt is that programming. But the real guilt would be like, if I reacted in a way that I wasn't proud of, if I got really angry at that person, if I said things I didn't mean. Being able to differentiate is something that I want you to start to strengthen your awareness of and your skills with, because it's something that will allow you to, again, feel more connected to yourself and just know more of who you are. The image of who we are sometimes is very often not as kind as it should be. We often see ourselves as so much more negative than we actually are, so much more imperfect, which perfection isn't really real, but we're so hard on ourselves sometimes. You're most likely a much better person than you give yourself credit for. So we can set these boundaries that honor our own needs and actually strengthen our relationships. Again, if we're afraid of disappointing other people, we can strengthen our relationships through boundaries. This is something I've learned the hard way many times. Like I mentioned, I tend to overcommit myself socially when I people please, and I end up feeling exhausted, not feeling appreciated, but also the other person can feel that I'm not fully present, that I'm thinking about everything else I need to do today. When I set boundaries that maybe give less of my time to someone, it allows my time or my energy, my attention to be more present and more intentional. And so instead of seeing someone all the time, whenever is right for them, whenever they want, seeing them maybe once or twice a week, and with family members or with certain people, maybe once or twice a month, when you see that person, you will feel so much more replenished, so much more energized. You will be so much happier to be there. You will have less resentment towards this person. You will be able to show up for them, offer them a listening ear or support or acknowledgement, whatever they need, at such a higher capacity. And even though your relationship is less frequent in maybe like FaceTime or attention, it will be so much higher quality. So you don't disappoint people by being an amazing friend, but you disappoint people by setting unrealistic expectations for how you can show up in a relationship and then not being able to meet that expectation, because then they feel neglected, abandoned, misled, whatever it is that we were trying to avoid them feeling in the first place. So it's time to reclaim our energy, our confidence. You reclaim that energy from the start by just, again, practicing saying no without over-explaining, by differentiating between the real guilt and the learned guilt or the false guilt, and just by getting stronger and stronger at setting boundaries by consistently checking in with yourself. This is something that seems so simple, but I've had to do for months and months. And it's simply just when someone asks me to do something, or I am deciding if I'm going to do something or not, even out of my own action. Maybe I think of someone and I'm like, oh, I should reach out to them. I ask myself, why do I really want to do this? It's the simplest question. but it allows me to rebuild my self-trust and my confidence by just checking in with myself. Like, oh, am I feeling lonely right now? Or is this something that I genuinely want to do? Am I feeling guilty right now? Or is this something I genuinely want to do? Is this just a pattern? Like, do I always say yes when this person or workplace asks? I'm just used to saying yes, and I'm afraid to break that expectation. Or is it something I really want to do? You can start tuning into your needs a lot more through little self-check-ins like this. Also, if you want to journal, simply journaling about how you feel, maybe a quick brain dump, make it like 5 sentences, make it super simple. I strive for 2 pages a day of just a brain dump, everything on my mind. You will see the thoughts start to come out of like, oh, this didn't fill my cup up. This didn't make me feel very good. I said yes when I meant no. I have a question for myself each day at the end of the day, which is, did I say no to things that didn't serve me? Did I say yes to things that did? Sometimes the answer is yeah, I set amazing boundaries and I'm so proud of myself. Other days, I didn't. And there's a lot of reasons we do that. We're not perfect people. But on those days, I notice how exhausted I feel versus the days where I really put myself as a priority. I feel so much more energized. I go to bed feeling so much more content with how I led my day, and I have more energy for the next day. So you have a ripple effect of people pleasing on your mental, emotional, and physical health. Like, it starts in this small action, but it becomes almost this snowball or this ripple effect. Like, you say yes to one thing that you don't have the time or energy for. Now you're behind on sleep. Now you're feeling a little bit resentful. Because you're behind on sleep or feeling a little bit resentful, you act in a certain way, and it can just spiral and spiral and spiral. So the opposite of that is we have a positive ripple effect on ourselves and the people around us when we put our mental, emotional, and physical health first. You become such a good role model to the people around you. You strengthen your relationships, and you just feel so much better. You don't feel like you're rushing through the days because you feel like you have more time. There's less anxiety, there's less overwhelm. You can grow your confidence. You can rebuild your confidence in your connection to yourself by these small little steps. And that's how you build essentially your self-respect as well. So I want to give us a couple like practical tools as well to stop people pleasing. First things first is anything that builds your self-awareness. So I already mentioned slowing down in your decision making, having some journaling reflections, but I'm also going to give you the invitation to also have more self-awareness in how you go through your days. And this is as simple as just doing things slower, talking slower, brushing your teeth slower, driving slower, getting dressed slower. If you're doing everything, feeling like you're on hyperspeed, often a sign that we're doing too much. If we're doing too much, then we might need some boundaries. So slow down and allow yourself to reconnect with yourself. Having self-awareness is that positive ripple effect of what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good, and then being able to act on it. I also want you to take this one little tip for more mindful communication with other people, and it's to notice how long you pause between a question and saying yes. If someone asks you to do something or for help with something, and you're saying yes before they're even done answering the question, it's too fast. If you're saying yes as soon as they finish asking the question, it's too fast. I want you to create a pause between the request and your confirmation or denial, your yes or no. I want you to make that pause over time, longer and longer, until it's as long as it needs to be for you to make 100% of your decisions, 99%, we're not perfect and that's okay, ones where you considered yourself. For me, this looks like living in a world that is highly dependent on cell phones. And so I used to feel a pressure to answer a message as soon as I received it. Answering a message as soon as you receive it serves the other person. And it might serve your short-term want for validation, but it doesn't serve you long-term. What were you doing before you answered that message? Like, were you in the middle of something and now you're sidetracked? Make a pause, maybe in your texting, maybe in your conversations in real life, maybe in the assignments you give yourself throughout the day. Give yourself a little bit longer between the idea or the request and when you say yes or no. Just a very simple tool for more mindful communication. People that you communicate with will feel your intention and they'll feel safer and more seen as a result. And then, of course, our general just kind of self-care practices that encourage self-worth and boundary setting. So it's with self-care, the way that I see this is that it's not so much the actions you're doing, it's why you're doing them. So adding that mindful pause in when you talk to yourself or other people, saying no more often, and then that consistent check-in with yourself, just how am I feeling today? What do I want to do? What am I avoiding? What do I not want to do? Where do I feel pressured? Where do I feel guilty? When you put all of those together, your self-care becomes natural. It becomes something you have more time for, and it becomes something that is much more intentional. So you can do the same activity. Maybe it's journaling before bed. When you do it because you're just doing it because you should, check it off the list, versus you're calm, you have more time, you're putting yourself first, the output of that practice becomes so different because the input, the intention you put in was also so different. So self-care becomes easier, becomes natural, it becomes, again, that positive ripple effect, positive snowball. I'm not telling you to carve out more time in your day for self-care. I'm just telling you to take some small actions that will free up some time and energy for yourself, and then maybe consider how we can adjust or add in more self-care as a result. So you have all of the small steps, the tools. I'm going to give you a couple little pointers for taking action on this as soon as possible, because now that you've learned all these fun things, I want you to be able to use them. So I already asked you earlier in the call to reflect on an area in your life where you wish you had set a boundary. The next reflection I want you to take is one where you reflect on where you can begin setting boundaries. And again, if this is something you struggle with, please send me a message either on Instagram, on school, via email, and ask me about the boundary setting formula I have. I am so happy to provide that. But focus and reflect on an area in your life where you can begin setting more boundaries. That formula that I have is also going to show you how to do that in a way that feels not overwhelming and doesn't cause conflict. I also want you to create a plan for one small no that you can practice this week. So, for example, I've already planned today that I've already sent the message. Proud of me. It's only 9 in the morning and I've already sent the message. Someone asked me to spend time and I don't feel like I have the energy today. My mind is somewhere else. I have other priorities. And I lovingly said, I wish I could, but here's what's going on in my life. Here's how I need to take care of myself. Let's maybe have lunch tomorrow instead. But one small no that you can practice this week, just one in the whole next 7 days. Start small. Once you start small, you'll find that it's a lot easier to do this more and more often, and you increase your frequency of doing so. That's the goal there. I also want to talk a little bit about how to handle pushback from others when you stop people pleasing. And again, I've already mentioned that we can't control how they respond, and that we just want to show up in a way that we are proud of. But I also need to say something that's maybe not the easiest to hear in this conversation of people pleasing and boundary setting, which is your relationships with people will change when you stop people pleasing. And many of them will change for the better. There might be some growing pains. People need time to learn our boundaries. But there also might be relationships that you realize are not the healthiest for you, that don't feel the best. And you might take a lot of space from those relationships. You might end those relationships. If they are relationships that end because you are taking care of yourself, then they are relationships that most likely did not allow you to put yourself as a priority in the first place. I just want to let that sink in. Many of us fear that if we set boundaries, we'll lose people. And that's a very natural, understandable fear. But the right people will be willing to meet you halfway and adjust because they want you to be happy. They want you in their life. The wrong people might not be able to do that. When you set boundaries, when you essentially raise your vibration, raise your self-worth, raise your confidence, you're someone that puts yourself on a higher tier now. You attract people, new people into your life that can meet you at that level. So yes, you might lose some people, but you will also gain people, many, many people in this life, and more people when you're doing this that are of a higher quality for what you need. So having the accountability with all of this is the most important thing. If this is something that you're struggling with, if something in this call is something that you're excited to implement, take whatever resonates with you and leave the rest. But send me a message about what feels the most important for us, the most aligned. And by sending that message to me or maybe to a friend, but so welcome to send it to me, you give yourself that accountability because you've made it real. You've put it out into the world. You've recognized it's something you need to do. Even just the people that have come in and out of this call, you've done that. If you're watching this, you've already shown yourself that this is something you need. But I want you to be able to check in with someone else and check in with me. So, and then, check in with yourself as a result. We're making fantastic time. This is such a valuable conversation. I'm so proud of anybody who's watching this, either on the Instagram Live or on Zoom, and people that will watch the recording of this. I'm so proud of you. It's hard to set boundaries. It's hard to stop people pleasing. It's not something we should be ashamed of, but it is something that we can take charge with. Now, if you're here with me on Zoom, you are most likely already either watching this or live, already in the free community that I run. For anybody that is maybe getting this link from YouTube or from somebody else for the recording, I just want to show you really quickly where this amazing call was first hosted. So we have a online club that is totally free as of now until our first 500 members, which we're almost at. And I'll share my screen really quick. It's called Balanced Baddies. It's free. And when we go to our little calendar here, we can see that I have masterclasses every other week with you guys. So we did better body image as soon as possible. We did how to stop comparing ourselves online. Right now we're doing how to stop people pleasing. There's also so many wonderful things in our classroom. There's so many courses here that you can dive into. You can also do a glow up power hour with me, which is where you have a one-on-one session with me. It's amazing. And then in the community, we can also share our experiences. So there's so many people in here who are wonderful and amazing and are working on the same things as us. But if you go to my Instagram, there is a link in my bio to join this club. If you are on school, just type in Balanced Baddies free. If you're on my TikTok, there's also a link. And then the one other thing that I'll show you is that we have a pro version of this club. So the main difference between the pro version and the free version is that the pro version is a much smaller group, so it's much more intimate. It is holding unconditional space for people to show up imperfectly as themselves. And if you look at our calendar, there's a lot more happening here. So if I go to this nice little view here, it's not going to show me what we have already done in September. For example, in August, we had new month goal setting calls. We had a masterclass with a body neutral personal trainer. We do group self-care and get on Zoom and do a face mask. We have a book club. We have a standing call with a sexologist every month where we talk about sex, relationships, and intimacy. And then we have the master classes that you have access to in the free version. In the classroom, you also have all of these courses completely unlocked. So everything you have in the free version, you have essentially the light version of. In the paid version, in this pro version, it is a monthly subscription. It's $54 a month right now. That goes up at the end of every month to accommodate our growing numbers and making this a group of really dedicated people, not just anyone can join. But in the free version, not all the courses are unlocked. The paid version, all of the courses are unlocked and you have extra things. So for example, this is not unlocked in the free version, but we have a mini cycle syncing course, which is an hour-long masterclass with me, and then a 30-page PDF that tells you exactly how to eat, move, and work for your cycle. There's just a lot of amazing things in here. Everything from movement, body image, cooking, food mindset, all of our mindset stuff here, like our self-care and our people pleasing and our perfectionism, all of that. And you get a high level of input when you are in this club, because I'm going to design the calendar for October very soon, for example, and I'll take input from the club exactly when we meet and what we meet about. So they help me decide all of the topics for the master classes every month. Every month is different, and you really get out of it what you put in. So this club is only for people that are highly dedicated to feeling more comfortable and confident in their bodies, for having more consistent routines, and for using the good energy of other people to have accountability and to grow and to learn even more. Because when you show up on a group call with multiple people who are highly dedicated to this work, you hear so many different perspectives and you learn so much faster. But this group is not for everyone. It is for people who are dedicated to leveling up in their life, to whatever you want to call your little glow up. It is all about just being a better version of ourselves. And you can join for 1 month, try it out, and then decide to continue or not. On my Instagram, there's a link, or on school, just search Balanced Baddies Pro. And otherwise, hop in our free community because we have some really amazing stuff in there. But I love these clubs so much. I run them for very little profit and just enough to kind of sustain them, to run them. But they fill me up so much inside. It is work that I love to do, that I value so much. And one of the main reasons that that's true is because of the people that I get to do this work with. So if you're watching the recording of this, if you were popping in and out live, if you're on the Instagram live, then I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so proud of you for being here. And I just want you to encourage you to recognize what your next step is. I gave a couple next steps. Maybe you're really feeling pulled towards joining one of the communities. If you're already in the free version, maybe it's the paid version. Trust that intuition and let that be the first step of you putting yourself first. So I will upload the recording of this. Again, if you are looking for the boundary setting formula that I have, either the video or the PDF, send me a message either on school or Instagram, and I will get that over to you. And otherwise, let's go off into the world. Let's lessen our people pleasing, increase our confidence, increase putting ourselves first, just break this people pleasing habit, because it is huge to take back so much of your time and energy. And if you have follow-up questions, send me a message, let me know. But that's everything for today. So I love you guys. I'll see you later.